cholesterol.
Yeah.
It's a highly controversial topic right now, which to me is wild.
It comes in waves.
Highly controversial. Many claiming it doesn't matter, and others saying it's the end-all, be-all of health. Can you explain what people need to know about cholesterol, both dietary and serum, so people can have a better understanding of the nuance?
Yeah. So when you think about cholesterol, people are just like, I have high cholesterol and that's bad for me. But what does that mean? So they're actually like lipoproteins, little proteins that carry the cholesterol around in your blood. Cholesterol, it's kind of like putting oil in water. It's not water soluble. So you need these little proteins that carry it around in your blood. So the one that everybody heard.
That's the best description I've heard of it. That's super helpful.
Just super simple. You need little proteins, and they call them these lipoproteins. So the one that everybody heard of is LDL cholesterol, or LDL is bad for you. That's low density lipoprotein cholesterol. When you measure somebody's cholesterol, it's an estimate really of these little particles. And I know 10 years ago when you went to the fitness summit, I did a whole thing of this, and I talked about the boats and the cargo being cholesterol, the boats being the proteins, basically. And the analogy is that these little boats can crash into the sides of the harbor, let's say, the harbor being your inside of your arteries, endothelial, if anybody cares, your little arteries. And they can kind of go in and they can come out. So they don't always cause atherosclerosis. But if they crash in and get stuck, that's when the body starts going and grabbing them. Our immune system goes and grabs them and starts that atherosclerosis cascade. So it's really these LDL particles that are the most worrisome. And specifically, it's the type of particle is an apolipoprotein B, which you've talked about in the past. That is more specific in terms of understanding somebody's risk as opposed to LDL cholesterol. And the thing is, LDL cholesterol does a pretty good job at estimating it. But truly, when you start looking at apolipoprotein B, the actual protein carrying, in which case most of those apolipoprotein B particles are LDL. There's other types of apolipoprotein B, which gets into it's a whole thing, but type 2 diabetes, you can have your LDL cholesterol can look fine, but your ApoB is actually high. That means because you have smaller LDL particles, and there's a bunch of them despite the same amount of that cargo. Mm-hmm. And then people can have a higher VLDL levels, other non-LDL apolipoprotein B particles. So when you go and get a cholesterol panel, you'll see total cholesterol on there. You'll also see HDL cholesterol. And people say, that's the good cholesterol. The smart lipidologist people, if anybody wants to listen to Dr. Dayspring on Twitter, he was my mentor. He always harps on people like, that's not the good cholesterol. HDL cholesterol, the cholesterol in the HDL is the same as, it can be the same as the cholesterol in an LDL particle. However, those HDL particles don't actually get into our artery walls, or they can, but it doesn't matter. They don't start causing atherosclerosis. So that's why people say, always look at your LDL cholesterol. And if you want to look a little bit further, look at your ApoB levels. So any type of cholesterol that's not HDL cholesterol is a surrogate marker or estimate of your apolipoprotein B. All right. So it starts getting really complicated, but the gist is that having high levels of apolipoprotein B in your body increases your risk of developing atherosclerosis. So the use case in this is that you see people on a ketogenic diet, carnivore, whatever. And some of these people, not everybody, develop very high levels of LDL cholesterol and apolipoprotein B levels, ApoB. And they'll say, well, I'm metabolically healthy, so these levels don't matter. Not true, because we see in diseases or genetic issues like familial hypercholesterolemia, where there's some sort of, just like I was talking about the monogenic obesity, you get these monogenic cholesterol issues where one of those genes that recycle the LDL cholesterol is broken. So your LDL cholesterol is floating around in your blood. You want it to go back to your liver, so your liver takes it up and you don't have as much in your blood anymore. In these conditions, someone can be very metabolically healthy, but they have a defect in recycling their LDL cholesterol. And what you see are very high levels of that LDL cholesterol and apolipoprotein B, despite being metabolically healthy. Those people are at far higher risk of developing atherosclerosis despite being super healthy. And what the keto people will say is that, like, well, I improved all my other health markers except the cholesterol, my LDL cholesterol and ApoB went up. So, like, it's probably a wash, right? It's like, well, maybe if you're feeling a lot better, that's great. But, like, if you're at a higher risk of developing atherosclerosis and heart disease with that higher ApoB than if you didn't have that higher ApoB, all things being equal. So that's kind of the gist. So if anybody's listening and going like, I don't know what the hell this guy just said, LDL cholesterol levels, and more specifically, we can even say non-HDL cholesterol levels and ApoB levels, are an independent risk factor for cardiovascular disease. This doesn't mean that other markers like blood pressure and insulin sensitivity and all those things don't matter. Those things, they're separate. Those things will accelerate the rate of atherosclerosis at the same levels of ApoB.